Hello, everybody. There you are, looking at us again. This is our 15th webinar, and we are still continuing the mini-series about the sexual exploitation bill. So just to remind you that at the start of the series, we have already told you about what the 10-minute bills are, what the current sexual exploitation bill at the Westminster Parliament is about. We told you about the background of this bill, and we, at the last webinar, spoke about client criminalisation and why it's so bad for sex workers, obviously. So right now we are going to talk a little about the criminalisation of adult service websites, which was another suggestion in the current sexual exploitation bill. And we'll see what consequences it has for sex workers. And the last installment in the mini-series, which is what can we all do to fight this bill, is going to be postponed, same as the bill itself is being postponed at the moment. We can't really fight it until it's actually being read. So you will hear from us at some point in the uncertain future. And now let's talk about the criminalization of online spaces for sex workers. So what happens if we can't advertise online anymore? There are obviously going to be higher levels of poverty and financial need. Sex workers will have to either rely on third parties, usually exploitative third parties, or the more marginalized of us might have to move to working outside. And all this means that we do not have the ability to pre-screen clients before we meet them, and we can't ensure safe working locations. We have less power in negotiating our services, but together with all the things that affect our actual work, we also lose the ability to communicate with other sex workers. There will be fewer spaces where we can exchange experiences with other sex workers. We will not be able to unionize successfully. We will not be able to campaign for our rights. And we also worry that some of the online services that provide some form of safety to sex workers or some support will also have to limit their online presence. Like, for example, NUM provides a lot of services to sex workers. All of it is based online. We don't know how much of it is going to be affected by the proposed legislation as it is at the moment. So altogether, including the personal social media accounts being affected too, leads to greater marginalization and isolation of sex workers, more stigma, always more violence, and obviously less trust in the police. And we actually have a case study of how this has already played out in other places.
Yes, so we've seen this happen. Back in 2018, there was a couple of bills that went through the US legal system, and their stated goal was to reduce human trafficking. They were going to do this by amending Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which sounds complicated, but really all it means is that they would hold internet platforms accountable for the content that their users post. So any site that allows anyone to post on that site would then be responsible for what their users have put online. So these laws never actually targeted sex trafficking directly, but they did make it incredibly easy to censor free speech on multi-user platforms. So we're talking sort of social media, any kind of forum, anything like that, where you can make an account and post. What we used to see was advertising sites would cooperate with police in trafficking investigations. After Foster-Sester passed, that no longer happened, obviously, because those sites did not exist anymore. So it made it incredibly difficult to successfully enforce any anti-trafficking laws. but there were also a bunch of consequences for sex workers as well. So the inability to work independently online forced sex workers to either work on the streets or through agencies or third parties, which opened them up to exploitation. Do you want to switch to the next slide, sweet? Thank you. So yeah, not only did these online spaces previously allow sex workers to mitigate harms, it also provided some financial security. After Foster Sester passed, most online respondents reported feeling less safe and financially secure. It made sex workers rely basically on other less safe platforms. But it wasn't just sites where you advertise. There were sites commonly known as bad date lists, where sex workers would share information about clients, much like we do here at Ugly Mugs. But they also fell within the very vague parameters of what Foster Sester criminalised. So they were all taken down as well. So any kind of verification system where a client will give contact information of past providers to vouch for them, things like Verify Him, they were quite popular and quite essential safety websites so that sex workers could share information about clients and work safer, basically. So online services such as Verify Him and Craigslist's erotic services section, they were shown to decrease female homicide by as much as 17.4%, which is quite significant. And obviously, any client that was dangerous was much easier to spot when we had these online spaces where we could essentially check up on our clients.
Next, we're going to have a look at some of the deaths in the wake of Foster Sester. So multiple sex workers, and you can see their details on the screen now. They were killed following the Foster Sester legislation passing, and the community response was that they would not have died, they would not have been killed had they had the tools available before Foster Sester. So some of the names like Maya Madison, some of these community campaigns that came out after this was saying these tools for vetting clients are essential, and it's a great way of making sure that bad clients are able to be identified. Thank you very much for listening to us today. Do remember that you can contact the casework team if you're needing. The details are on the screen now, including our Twitter and our Instagram. We can have caseworkers there, and also we do have vouchers available for people needing like for food support and whatnot during COVID. Thank you very much for your time. Bye.